Welcome to the Berks Homes podcast, the business of building homes. I'm Katie. I'm here with my brother Ben, and today we are talking about our core value of driven, what it means to be driven at Berks Homes. And I'm pumped about this one because I think it's the one that comes most naturally to me.
Oh, yes.
What about you?
Sure. It's certainly one that's easiest in our genetics, possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an easy one to talk about. We talked last week about awareness.
Being difficult to talk about.
Yeah. So, yeah, this one's easy. Let's take 1 second and just talk about the Eagles being in the Super Bowl very briefly.
I mean,
that's why
what a day.
My voice is a couple octaves lower.
What was it like being at the game?
It was nice. It wasn't too cold. It was in the 40s. Good vibes all around. Basically required to go because I'm undefeated in NFC Championship games.
And every one that you've attended?
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. All 2 of them. So now 3-0. Yeah. So yeah, that is a great time. We had a lot of fun. Saw some people that I wasn't expecting to see. Saw 2 of my cousins. Yes.
Did you know that they were going?
Well, yeah, Jaden.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about Jaden later.
Mm-hmm.
Then our other cousin, John. So, and his wife, Megan. So it was awesome. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, we had a great time. And record time getting back.
Really?
Because everybody was...
Oh, they stayed.
Staying.
Yeah.
Walking down Broad Street.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like 45 minutes.
No.
Yeah. To get to my house. Yeah.
Just...
It was unbelievable. Incredible. I couldn't believe it. I kept saying, I was like, this never happens. I was like, anyway. So it was a magical day.
That's amazing.
Day. And I feel great. I was literally home at 7:30.
When you texted that you were home,
yeah,
I was like, what is happening?
Well, I did that whole thing in 2008.
Yeah.
When the Phillies won the World Series, walked all the way from the stadium up to City Hall on Broad Street. That was a magical time. And when you win or you get into the Super Bowl or, go to the World Series multiple times in a row, kind of like we have, loses its luster a little bit because you know what you're sacrificing. I mean, I didn't get home until 5 in the morning that time. So, yeah, that's a young man's game.
And the weather is a little colder.
Yeah.
You're a little older.
Yeah, no.
It's not happening.
Yeah, maybe some other day. I have work to do. So here we are. It's Monday, but it's a good Monday.
It really is.
And we're going to talk about driven. What comes to mind for you when we talk about this very important core value that we have, and zooming out a little bit, why, along with the other ones, this one is just kind of so important?
There's so many different ways to think about this. To start, though, in conjunction with the other ones, it's just the perfect balance.
Yeah.
Especially between helpful and humble.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, anyway, because sometimes helpful and humble can keep you from pushing.
Yeah.
And I think that this is the best way to counterbalance that by having it say, okay, we're not stopping, we're not letting our helpfulness and humility probably especially, keep us from winning and from achieving. Yeah.
So I think there's a misperception that, being a nice, kind, helpful, humble person can't be very driven and results oriented.
Right.
So how do you tackle that possible misperception?
Well, by highlighting the fact that it is just as important. It's on equal playing field here. Mm-hmm. Being nice, being kind, celebrating the team wins with humility, like being that, caring, all of those things are just as important as the drive. Mm-hmm. So I think that the way that we've curated these 4 core values creates the perfect blend to be as successful as we are, but also hold on to our beliefs about how we should treat each other.
Yeah.
But and honestly, being driven and achieving is not counteract kindness.
No.
And in fact, I think it enhances it in a lot of ways because, Brene Brown, clear is kind. You being clear, being direct, being focused is a kindness.
Yeah.
It is super helpful.
Yeah.
Because nothing's getting in your way.
Where do I stand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here. This is
Always
the answer.
I'm always going to tell you exactly where you stand.
What do you think? Is that kind of...
Yeah, I mean, driven is a way of accountability to yourself and to others. The way I always look at driven is if you, let's just, in our context here at our place of work, being one of the 4 words that we highlight all the time, I think you can't come in here and be taught how to be driven. You know, I mean, you need to start with yourself. You know, you're not going to come in here and be not really driven and then all of a sudden be like, oh yeah, now I know how to go achieve things. It's more of an enhancement.
Yeah.
But it has to be something internal first. You know, because, and it's about pride a little bit. Like not the pride that is the opposite of humility.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I do this because it's the right thing to do, you know, for my team, for the company, and then for myself.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be the best at what I do for myself first, and then the team, and then the company. You know what I mean? Like it has to come from within.
Yeah.
Like, why do you go the extra mile? Because it's the right thing to do. Because that's who I am, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I always look at it. Like that's what I want people to say if asked a question. Why would you do it when it's really not required? Well, because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, I'm putting my mark on it. That's just who I am.
Yeah.
I'm not really saying that about me. I hear that all the time. You know, here we say, well, that's because he's a maniac.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yeah.
Somebody that's like just, you know,
above and beyond,
taking care of everything, covering all the bases, because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, if you look at what we have written here, the result of being driven is we are never satisfied with the status quo.
Right.
That's exactly it right there.
Right.
You know,
that's
you could just
goal.
check the box, or you couldn't, you're not satisfied.
Right.
And I think that's really prevalent in most of the people here.
Yeah, the continuous improvement piece.
Well, you touched on this very briefly, and I want to come back to the fact that you brought up accountability with this. I think that's another really important thing to explore a little here in conversation. Like we should probably just say what we have defined driven as.
Yeah.
What it means is passionately motivated to achieve lofty goals. How to express it is be tenacious and exceed expectations. And the result is we are never satisfied with the status quo. And so let's kind of go over what you mean with bringing accountability into play with this.
I would expect if I'm going to require, you know, one of our team members to do something over and over or periodically, that's just on their job description or something, then I would expect the same from them to me. And if I'm asking them to do something and I haven't really given them or removed all the obstacles for them, then I would expect a little bit of pushback and, you know, accountability on my end to make sure that those obstacles are taken away.
Yeah.
And so it's both ways, right?
Yeah, it's holding each other
yeah.
accountable to be able to exceed expectations.
Right. And sometimes things just work out well and you get a little lucky, you know, like you
what?
Push the ball down the field and all the things go well. It's just like, I don't know, say, getting a new piece of land. Somebody calls randomly, you get it. There wasn't a lot of magic involved and whatever you want to call it, just being the right time, right place. Or you can continuously, you're persevering. There's all kinds of things that might throw a monkey wrench into a deal.
Right.
And, you know, you have to work really hard at it. But accountability is always knowing that no matter what, if it's easy or really hard, there's somebody that's going to be there to say, where are we at? Whatever. If it's a Tuesday update that you are always giving updates on Tuesday, you're going to get asked about it on Tuesday. And it's just like clockwork, right? When you give your update and it's the same as the week before, and then there's a follow-up question like, like even those, you sent me an email earlier that was like, hey, these are all opportunities, but I don't know what the updates are. And I kind of had like two ways to respond to that, which was like, well, I don't know. Like ask the people, or it's like, no, like I need to go get these answers because it's the right thing to do. We need clear communication at all times of the status of projects.
Right.
Because that's what it is.
And it's not me saying anything like there's something wrong or anything like that. It's more like
this is part of the job.
Holding you accountable, you holding me accountable for the results then from the answers you give me.
Let's go get them.
Right.
And, sometimes ebbs and flows with you being driven, right? We all have we work a lot, don't take a ton of time off, and we all have, these kind of peaks and valleys of motivation. But I think that if you're driven, you figure out a way at all times to push through. And at least pass the baton to somebody that might be a little more motivated that week.
Yeah.
Like I just can't.
Tap other people in.
Yeah, I can't. I'm overloaded. I can't.
Well, that's the beauty, again, of all of these working together, is you're going to take turns doing or achieving different parts of these core values, and it's represented more or less in every person.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might need to lean on the driven one to kind of get some of their drive.
Right.
Hey, can you just ask me about this every week?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or like, how do you stay on top of this? Or, like that's the collaboration of working together as a team and utilizing our strengths.
Yeah. And then being humble enough, I always look at that like I'm not moving the company forward on my own merit. It's just not possible. Right. Not one of us is going to do that.
Mm-mm.
So it's like, well, if there's others that are inherently driven to be on the phone, pounding the pavement for, sales or new land opportunities, then let's put that on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Capitalize on each other's strengths.
Yeah. If I'm more suited to be behind the scenes pushing things, then, let me put myself in that position, and who cares? I don't need credit for it.
Right. Exactly.
But that's where that kind of stuff works really well together, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Let's see. What else do we want to talk about with being driven and how it applies? We talked a lot about how it's connected with everything else. It is last on the list. And I feel like that's purposeful also.
Yeah.
It kind of, to me, scales from inherent. Well, this is interesting because I'm contradicting myself right now. Like when you think about helpful, humble, aware, driven, helpful to me is, again, what we talked about a lot. It's just who you are.
Sure.
A lot of the time.
Yeah.
Either you are or you aren't. Like I'm not actually inherently helpful. I think I talked about this a little bit.
Yeah. Like
luckily I had our mother as a mother and I learned a lot from her. But naturally I don't see the things that she does. She had to teach me to see things.
Right.
To be helpful.
Yeah.
And notice the opportunities, which thank goodness for that.
Well, I think, helpfulness is easier to learn than humility. Right.
But we also had a good dose of learning that as well.
Yeah. That was more of like that was just like ever-present learned behavior.
Right.
But I guess, helpful and humble. Yeah, you can kind of learn those.
Maybe I'm just talking more. This is interesting because I might be just saying this because my natural tendency is to be driven.
And you're just like really selfish, or?
No.
Well, do you think helpful is more of a skill that you can learn than driven?
Well, that was what I was just going to ask you. Maybe it's not more or less of any of them. It's more just about the person, where you're starting.
Yeah.
And then you have to learn the other ones.
Right. So if we, when we hire people, we actually curating that their answers according to these core values, right?
Yep.
So are you putting forth that you can just be naturally one of these and learn all of the other ones? Or Are you saying you have to have a little mix of all of them already?
I think that everyone, this is now what I've decided in real time.
Okay.
I think
Write
that
it in
you
stone.
are probably naturally more of one or two.
Yeah. I would say 2.
And the other 2 are more learned behavior.
Right.
We are hiring for all of the above, but not as a perfect mix. You can't.
No.
You can't be everything. But it has to be a little bit present.
Right.
And then you get the opportunity to develop the ones that maybe you're not natural at.
Correct. I'm just thinking, how do you, so is it in the experiences, if you can think about all the successes and maybe failures as well of people that have displayed one of these in such a significant outsized way other than the other ones? Was there any trait, any core value that you found it's very hard to get them to include the other 3 if one is so dominant?
Probably driven.
Driven.
Yes.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, if you are so passionately driven for results exclusively, it might be a little hard to work here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Now, I would say that the helpful crowd, they go under the radar a little bit.
In what way?
If you're just overwhelmingly helpful, and that is you by far your most dominant, of these 4, you're going to be able to just
you get away with more?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like in terms of, I'm only
not gonna ruffle feathers.
Only talking about performance, right? He's such a nice guy,
right?
You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to say that one's worse than the other, but certainly in our culture, when you just value common courtesy and decency and stuff, like that tends to look like helpful more. And whereas I find that, you and I probably defend the ultra-driven people a little more than others here.
Absolutely. And I think that that's interesting too, because we probably need a little more than what we might have tolerated in the past. Not on its own, not exclusive. To your point, you can railroad people, and that is not what we want by any stretch. But we don't have to be scared of driven either.
No.
We don't have to be offended by drive, and I think that that's an important shift I've noticed, is that getting easier to push without resistance from anyone else, which is great, because that's how we'll be successful.
Well, it can be done.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's my whole thing is always like, well, it is not one or the other. Like,
right.
There's been wonderful examples of this over the years that it can work.
Well, it's part of what we're really working on now, is breaking down the silos between departments, between teams, between people, that being asked a question, being just following up on things, all of that is not a challenge. It is not a shot towards someone else. It is truly just trying to kind of pick up our game a little bit and say, okay, we're going to win this year. We're going to really clean this up. We're going to make some important progress. So let's do it together.
Right.
Where are we at? What are we doing?
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Right. Well, and you need somebody it's just the way it is naturally, somebody that's going to just push a little bit. When you have a group, I don't care what it is, business, nonprofit, government, when there's enough people involved, there still has to be one at least. Yeah. That's like, can we just let's stop and keep going, stop talking and just move.
Yeah.
I don't like being the vocal one about that. I just like it to happen.
Why don't you like being the vocal one?
Because I don't understand why you have to
say it.
And so it's just not naturally. Now, I think some people are very good at just constantly proclaiming it and being like, this is just the way that you need to lead people. For me, that's just been a learning experience of like, hey, sometimes a group of people, they just need to hear it.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, that's something that I think both of us have gotten a lot better at.
Yeah, they just want to hear it. They just want it. We talked about it last week a little bit with like the inspirational piece of that, where it's like, hey, if that's part of the human psychology, then count me in.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
It's just something that I've had to learn. Yeah, it's been a challenge for me in terms of the verbalizing, where, sometimes what's obvious to me is just, it's not obvious to everybody.
Well, that's so true. There's so many times that I have thought something like, oh, why are we doing it that way? Or, oh, I didn't, and not said anything.
Right.
And that is, again, that's unkind.
Right.
That is not being a good leader. That is not bringing up our game to the next level. It's just so much easier to, in real time, say, oh, by the way, you and I have never had this conversation. I just want to let you know this is what I see, and this is why I would expect it to be like this. Does that make sense? And have a quick conversation about it, and then move on with your day. Instead of it building up, you see the same thing over and over, not say something.
Yeah. It's kind of like when somebody says, anyone have any questions? There's no dumb questions. It's like a real thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, that's just what everybody says. But then you're like, no, seriously, if you have a question, 99% of the time, there's another person, if it's a group of 10 or more or something, somebody else has the exact same question.
Yes.
To you, it might be like dumb in your mind that you're asking it, but to the other people, they're like, yeah.
Oh, thank you for asking that. Yeah.
Yeah. Does that mean I have to go in here and do this thing? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, maybe we didn't say it. So I think that a group has a ton of opportunity for synergy and to move faster, but it also has the opportunity to be really slow when it's a group. Right. And so if you're leading, the way to be driven, it doesn't have to be that like I'm standing on the table yelling about results. It's just asking questions about what's next.
Yes.
And that's like a trait that I wrote down at the end of the year, skill that I wanted to work on this year, which is just asking questions in a way that would prompt others to action.
Okay, like what?
Just anything. Tell me more about that.
You're not letting it drop, you mean?
Not letting it drop. Not necessarily for any other reason other than making everybody, including myself, think through all the different aspects of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Not being like, did you do this?
Right.
That sounds more like checking work. But more about, have we thought about this opportunity or this possibility or this, or if that doesn't happen that you're telling me, I'm saying I don't believe you. What are we going
to do?
Yeah, what's the contingency? Because our business is all about contingencies.
Oh, yeah.
That's all it is. I mean, I can't believe I never said that out loud. On the way up here, I had 2 conversations that something could happen and it would be totally different than if it doesn't happen in the next 48 hours for stuff in the business. Just, normal run-of-the-mill stuff.
Yeah.
Are we buying this lot on this date? If we don't, what do we do here? It's just all you're doing is running parallel paths constantly.
And imagine if you don't talk about it.
Yeah, because what will happen if you don't have constant contingencies? We have terrible weather this month.
Yeah.
Stuff happens every day. It's freezing, blah, 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 all this stuff. If you don't run through alternative scenarios, then all of us, you just won't get results.
Right.
We
don't have anything on here about that. It's a really, really important piece to it.
Yeah. Well, I think awareness, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
That's a little bit of it. I mean, in this
ask
context,
good questions and stay engaged. There you go.
Right. You have to be aware of, the possibilities.
I was just looking at driven. So again, it's working in hand with the other ones.
Absolutely. Helpful is proactively be of use and service.
Yeah.
So that means looking ahead of different situations and kind of gaming out those contingency plans. I'm going to be helpful and cover the bases.
Right. Yeah, I just had that happen today too. Not normally, but in the past, I probably wouldn't have followed up with the question that I did today. Someone asked me if we could spend money, add some licenses to a new program. And instead of just saying yes, because I was given a demo on it, I understand we need it. I completely understand why we're using it. But I didn't say in the previous conversation, I don't want us to just add money here, though. Who's actually monitoring it? Whose budget is it going on? And what are we going to cut instead of just adding?
Was it budgeted?
Right, because I know it's not budgeted.
Right.
So what are we doing if we're gaining all of these efficiencies by adding people to this program, what can we stop doing now?
That's a good question.
And again, that to me is growth in just expressing the drive. I'm not just going to let this get out of control.
Right.
This is not that a couple of licenses is getting out of control, but it's the thought process. It's the next step. It's sticking to the plan for this year.
Right.
That's how we will achieve our lofty goals.
Yeah.
And stay on track.
I think sometimes it can get camouflaged too, because you want to have a great level of trust with those around you that work with you, especially when you delegate something to them.
Yeah.
And I know that I've fallen into that trap a little bit of like supreme level of trust. Like, hey, this is your gig. If you've thought through it, you want to add these licenses, it's great. Go ahead. But it's not necessarily being the most responsible if you haven't given them the lens to look through.
Right.
If they don't have access to that kind of information, then you're actually the one dropping the ball.
You have to be the one to drive it.
So it's a good lesson. Well, I think we beat this up enough here.
I was going to say, you're jotting a lot of notes down over there.
Yeah, to-dos. Something. No. Yeah, I think that driven is a really, really critical pillar of, not just our organization, but any. And the goal is to develop as many people with that skill set as possible, because it can be exhausting. You have a large organization and everybody is only, waiting on one or two people to drive.
Yes, that's exactly right. We want everyone to feel completely comfortable with being responsible to push things along. It's not a bad thing.
And that's why it's, part of these guiding principles, because you can't build a great organization with only having a few people, embody the values.
Exactly. Yep.
It just doesn't work. No, I think that was really good.
Yes.
So have a shout out. Talked about our cousin Jaden, who is now an employee here, and giving him a shout out because of his incredible work on our cell phone plan.
Yes.
Right. So we're just kind of like overhauling all of our IT stuff, and the cell phone thing was a big deal, and we're going to save a lot of money this year for really no sacrifice. My service is so much better.
This is a great one for you to talk about, because
I got a new phone too, and it's like I haven't dropped a call in our office since we switched over last month.
That was probably the most annoying thing about you for a little while, is that every time I called you, your phone would drop the call in the middle of our conversation.
Sitting
in
literally at my desk.
Yes.
And it's amazing that the window lasted that long, because I would almost threw my phone through the window like 73 times. Or my phone that I just didn't throw it into the creek.
We did a lot. Okay, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know if you hear. All right, I'll see you. Yeah, that kind of stuff. So Jaden, shout out. Thank you for nailing that down. Being driven.
I will add to that too, something that is a fantastic trait of his is the reason this is happening is because he listens to people.
Yeah.
So this is coming about because, not just because of his drive, because he really is very driven, but because he just asked what we could do. He got this information from Dylan, I think. So Dylan and Zach have done a fantastic job bringing stuff like that. He compiles it, makes it happen.
Right.
It's amazing.
It's pretty easy.
It's a good teamwork, guys.
What's your challenge?
My challenge is, if it were up to me, I'd have everybody read a book every week. So I haven't brought that up for a while. I just finished rereading Unreasonable Hospitality.
Yeah, I haven't read that.
Because
I'm going to write that down.
In a little book club for the first time ever, which I'm excited about. And that book just had so many things in it that we've been talking about implementing into our business. And so I would highly recommend everybody reading Unreasonable Hospitality.
What's the elevator pitch here? Why is it called unreasonable?
Because...
like relentless?
Yes. And that's part of why I thought this was good for today with Driven is it's above and beyond, like crazy ideas, crazy hospitality, but also the way that they can get away with doing all the extra things. It's about 11 Madison Park. It's a restaurant owner who wrote this book. But the reason that they can get away with it is because they're so over the top with their cost control, with their processes, with refining and efficiencies and all of this stuff, that then you can kind of go nuts with the extras for customer service. So it's pretty cool. He walks you through the balance of really getting refined on the little things that save you time and money in order to put the wow factor in for people.
Kind of like Southwest or something.
Yeah.
Like where, you know, they were like started as a value airlines.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. This is like a very luxury dining experience, like elevated, you know, stars. Those
Michelin
things. Yes.
Man.
Yeah. So they were like #1 restaurant in the world. And, you know, so that was an interesting twist because a lot of the time I couldn't relate to some of the little businesses that have done this with little things, little transactions, because ours home
big.
is the largest transaction of your lifetime typically.
Right.
So, you know, we have to elevate it in ways that just like a 2-hour plane ride you can't replicate.
Yeah.
Because it's over months and months of people's lives and all of that stuff. So this was interesting to kind of look at it through a luxury lens because...
yeah, right. So a bigger purchase, but ours wouldn't be considered necessarily luxury, but the opportunities that you have are limitless.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of times that you're interacting.
Yes.
And like the only commensurate gift that would be appropriate is if we like, okay, here's like a car at the end, right?
Exactly.
Because it's such a big purchase. But, you know, obviously that's completely insane.
Well, maybe somebody's going to come up with how to give away a car at the end of every home after reading it. So.
Maybe we'll make a partnership with Mercedes or something.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, no, that sounds really good. I'm interested in reading that. I'm excited. This is great.
I know. We've got one more core value coming up.
Awareness.
What it means to be aware.
Yeah. Thank you for coming in. This is your sabbatical week.
Yeah. When you were talking about ebbs and flows of drive.
Yeah.
I'm in my ebbs.
Valley.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of trying to get my peace and calm and center back and come back swinging next week. But I needed a minute to a lot of all of my thoughts that have been swirling around my head for about a year out, plan, you know, strategize, all that stuff.
No, that's great.
So that if you don't see me this week, well, actually, when you hear this will be last week. That's why.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Right.
All right.
Have a good week, everybody.
Yeah. 2 weeks into the Super Bowl.
Let's go.